big news in the social media world. It's finally happened. Twitter has decided to permanently ban Donald Trump from its platform. In fact, they announced this in a tweet that I'll share with you. They claim that after a close review of recent tweets from Donald Trump's account and the context around them, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. And as you guys know, this comes following what happened earlier this week with Trump supporters rioting in the Capitol. They broke into the Capitol building several times. That led to a total of 5 people dying. One of them, a DC Capitol Police officer, and then there were 4 rioters who died as well, including one woman who got shot within the Capitol building, which was, an absolutely hideous thing that happened in this country. So Trump has put out all sorts of statements that have incited violence throughout his first term. So it's not shocking to me that he was continuing to do it even after Twitter had decided to suspend him earlier this week. But after that suspension, he was back on Twitter, and I don't know what he tweeted out specifically that led to this decision. But they decided that no, now we're gonna do they said permanent suspension, which is kind of a conflicting statement. It's a ban, like permanent ban. Suspension's different. But anyway, he's gone from Twitter forever based on what they're saying. What do you guys make of this?
Fairly.
Well, I think this is obviously kind of a logical conclusion for Twitter to go ahead and come to at this point. They've been teasing it out for weeks. We've all seen it that, oh, don't worry, as soon as he's not president, he loses the world leader status. We can totally ban him. Like they knew they were gonna have to do it. But then I think after what happened this week, then they saw Facebook and Instagram go ahead and do the same thing. They thought, okay, well now we're behind the curve. We've got to do this because everybody else is doing it. We don't want to look like the only people still giving him a platform. So I feel like they feel like this was definitely something they had to do, especially because we're already seeing these people, these pro-Trump protesters are already talking about more events, I guess you could call them, for lack of a better term. So we know
more attacks
they're not done. Right, exactly. That's the best way to say it. More attacks. So we know they want to do more. And Twitter has finally said, look, enough's enough. We put our own rule in place that we couldn't ban him. Let's go ahead and not follow our own rule. And I think they did the right thing.
It is interesting that Twitter was the last social media platform to ban Trump, and that Facebook and Instagram had done it prior to Twitter making the decision, because I felt like in terms of fact checking Donald Trump's deceptions, Twitter was a little more willing to do it as opposed to Facebook. So it is kind of shocking that he's been banned from all of these platforms. But Frederick, let me go to you, because one question that I have, I want to celebrate, of course, because he's been such a terrible, motivating factor behind some of the horrible events that have happened in this country, not just over this past week, but obviously, the beginning of his presidency started with the Charlottesville, hate marchers saying the Jews will not replace us. Are you at all worried that this could have unintended consequences like censorship for other people on these social media platforms?
No, I'm not worried about that at all, frankly, because I think that the suspension is a day late and a dollar short, right? This is something that people have been asking for, as you said, since Charlottesville and before. The reality is this, you brought up the fact that Twitter was the last major social media outlet to do this. Let's be honest. The reason for that is that it's his primary source of communication, right? He has 88 million followers, and at the end of the day, Twitter has shareholders, and whether it's good people or bad people, quote unquote, they are still people using the platform. So, I do think that for those of us on the other side of things, this is something to celebrate, but there needs to be accountability. And I don't worry about the Donald Trumps and the Trump Juniors and Ben Shapiro's of the world having their accounts suspended, frankly.
Yeah, I think you make a good point by mentioning some of the more provocative right wingers who don't really, cross that boundary, or at least I haven't noticed them cross that boundary too often where they start inciting violence. They just have provocative opinions. And I certainly think that those opinions, while I wholeheartedly disagree with them and I find them abhorrent, like I don't think that they should be censored on these platforms. I think inciting violence, for me at least, is a very specific thing that you should at least have a discussion about when you're considering banning someone from one of these platforms. I've pretty much been against censorship on these platforms with the exception of Alex Jones, and I explained my reasoning behind that. He did incite violence. He was directing his audience members to go after the Posner family, who had lost a son during the Sandy Hook shooting massacre. And so with his allegations of false flag operations and all of that stuff, his unhinged fans decided to harass this family to the point where they had to move 7 different times. They had all sorts of terrifying voicemail messages and threats against them. And so they were terrorized by his supporters. And I thought, look, this is an extreme case where it makes sense to deplatform someone. And really, Donald Trump is no different. Donald Trump does incite violence. He encourages his supporters. In fact, the very day that the right-wing extremists decided to break into the Capitol building and rain terror on anyone in there, they were encouraged by Donald Trump. He had a rally, and toward the end of the rally, he encouraged them to march to the Capitol. And he didn't say specifically do what you did, but he speaks in a language that makes it pretty clear that he wants them to get physical, to force their way into getting what they want on behalf of what he wants. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. We've already experienced so many incidents, involving his incitement.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I have a question here too. It's like, how long is it going to be now until he issues the executive order trying to get rid of the Section 230 protections, now that he's so ticked off at all of these social media outlets here? And the funny thing about that is that that's actually going to hurt these conservative folks a lot more. And yet they've all said, we've got to do this, we've got to take away these protections. But these protections are actually their protections. That's what allows them to say the crazy things without getting banned left and right. Because when you take away those protections, suddenly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whoever it is, they face the full liability for everything that gets posted on their site. And it will result, I believe, if he gets rid of 230, in widespread censorship of everybody left and right. If that's where that would head, just because they have to play it safe. And who knows how far it would extend. Would it go to YouTube? Would it go to these other video platforms too? So that's a slippery slope. That's the slippery slope, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And a dangerous, angry Trump could easily do something like that.
Well, the good news about Section 230, and let me be clear, Section 230 has its own issues and flaws, that's for sure. Yep. And members of both parties have wanted to reform Section 230 because it just provides too much of a liability shield for these social media platforms. However, these social media platforms realize that members of both parties were looking to reform this policy. And so what they did while Donald Trump was renegotiating NAFTA, or what he now refers to as USMCA, was they ensured that Section 230 was baked into that trade deal. And that's really important because the United States unilaterally cannot just repeal Section 230. It's very likely that you would have to get other countries involved. The social media outlets could easily file a lawsuit against the US government for doing it unilaterally. David Dayen from the American Prospect did a fantastic job outlining the details of that in June, by the way, of 2020. So well before Trump was calling for Section 230 to be repealed. So I don't think that Trump is gonna be able to do that through executive order. So I guess we're safe on that end. And honestly, Trump is at his lowest. I don't know if he has the ability to do anything at this point. Lisa Murkowski is now the first Republican who's on the record calling for Trump to resign. And she says that if he does not resign, she'll be leaving the Republican Party. So that's some pretty big news as well. We'll see how it all plays out. But this is big news. I honestly did not expect this to happen, but we'll give you guys more details as we learn more.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.